All right, man. Peace. Now, this is an article that I found a while ago. There's another story that I meant to do, and and let me say this: I'm receiving messages from people that are trying to give me ideas for videos, and thank you for that. But when you don't see me do a video, it's because I have a lot of things that I have to handle. It's not because I'm out of ideas for videos. Believe me, I have enough ideas for the next 10 years. All right. So, but I appreciate all of the people sending me messages and things like that. But now this is an article that I had in my that I had saved for probably about a month now that I wanted to do a video on. It says new U.S. study says gay people are not born that way. Sexual orientation not fixed. Written by Mr. Armando Flavio. I'm trying to figure out how come this has not been reported on the news. All right. Says the issue of sexual orientation has been a very controversial issue since nations in the West. Notice he says in the West. Like I said, this is a Western culture thing. We know the Western culture is dominated by the so-called Caucasian male, led by the so-called Caucasian Jew, right, who comprises the lead in the media and in the banking. All right. Says anyway, the issue of sexual orientation has been a very controversial issue since nations in the West began to recognize gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgender rights. Now, I stated in the past the reason why they did that was in veneration of their god Pan. All right. Pan is the woodland god of pederasty, and he's also a hermaphrodite god, right? In the form as known as the Baphomet. Right, that's just an extension of the god Bacchus. All right, or as he's also known as Saturn, or Osiris, or whatever name you want to call him. All right, that is the god that's in reference there. That's the god of this society, right? When you see those people like the UN and when they talk about God, they're not talking about the God of the Bible. They're talking about Osiris, aka the hidden one, Amun-Ra, or Saturn, right? Shiva. They're all talking about the same entity. All right. But anyway, an important part of the current LGBT debate is the belief that sexual orientation is predetermined by biology. Therefore, if a person has no choice over whether to be gay or not, society cannot demand that he or she become straight. This is a sound and reasonable argument. Indeed, society cannot force people to change from something they have no control over. Now, all this is a pretext. And as they're going to show as we read down in this article, because they have not been able to prove scientifically that anyone is born homosexual. All right. They cannot prove it. There's no such thing as the gay gene. And when we finish this article, I'm going to show you where the so-called gay gene philosophy comes from. So now let's see. On the other hand, the born that way argument has been disputed by some people. A latest cross-discipline study published in the journal New Atlantis has challenged the belief that human sexuality and gender identity are determined by biology and remains fixed. The New Atlantis journal focuses on political, societal, and ethical ramifications of technological advances. The study, carried out by two researchers from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, revealed that there is no scientific proof of sexual orientation being fixed. The researchers said the objective of their study is to draw the attention of the public to mental health problems of the LGBT community. Now, didn't I tell you guys in the previous video that I did when they were trying to promote the so-called gay attack or homosexual attack on the subway, that these people suffer from mental health problems? All right. You're never going to see me make a statement where I say, you know what, you're a homosexual, you deserve death. Well, let me not say that. I might say that depending on the state of the conversation. All right. But predominantly what I'm going to tell them is that, I feel pity for you, to be honest with you, because you probably were a victim of molestation. And it's irrefutable. Everything that I say is a fact. All right. Homosexuals are outstandingly the victims of pederasty or pedophilia. Once again, going back to the god of that philosophy, Pan. All right. They need help. Homosexuality was classified as a mental disorder up until the mid-1970s. This is a fact. Anyway, the study cautioned against drastic medical treatment for transgender children. And I said this is what they're going into now, because the next step is to push the transgender movement on the child, because that's going now. The next phase is going to be pedophilia or pederasty. All right. Now, the Psychiatric Association has already classified pedophilia as a sexual orientation. For those of you who don't know that. All right. They do not view it as a mental illness. They view it as a sexual orientation. So the Psychiatric Association, they're down with the so-called international bankers. They get told what to teach in regards to what is mentally stable as opposed to what a mental health issue is. All right. And that goes back to, what's his name? I believe his name was Albert or Alfred Kinsey. He was a Caucasian Jewish psychologist who did a lot of sexual orientation studies, but he was sexually depraved himself, and he was a pansexual. He was known for taking objects and sticking them up his urethra. And you can look that up. For those of you who don't know what a urethra is, that's the hole in your penis that you piss and you ejaculate out of. All right. Alfred Kinsey would stick objects up his urethra. That's how depraved he was. But this is the guy who wrote. This is the guy who's going to write articles on what is on what is acceptable sexually. All right. But anyway, according to the study, regardless of its political worth, the born this way notion by the LGBT community is not backed up by sufficient scientific data. No, that's incorrect. It's not backed up by any scientific data. It's not backed up by a goddamn thing. All right. But the study did not conclude or state that being gay is a choice. It merely said stating the opposite may be wrong. Look, let me say this. And, I know a lot of you brothers out there don't believe in the scriptures. I get a lot of Afrocentric cats that come to my channel. All you brothers are welcome. I have love for all of you. All right. Long as y'all are, can disagree and be respectful about it. That's fine. All right. But look, there's no way in the world that that being gay is something that is purely a choice. Nor is being gay something that is based in your genetic structure. It's what's known in the scriptures as being under a demon. All right. Now, they may call that a mental disorder. Right. That's why I say those people need help. OK, when you walk down the street and you see somebody talking to themselves, that's a person that needs help. All right. They don't need to be told, oh, you're OK because you're just talking to yourself. You're not hurting anybody. That person needs help because eventually they are going to hurt themselves or somebody else. All right. Somebody who is under the gender identity or the sexual orientation disorder known as homosexuality. Eventually, they're going to either find somebody else who has that same disorder, or they're going to try to seduce somebody else into that same disorder. And people can be seduced into a lifestyle. There's no doubt about that. Same way somebody could be seduced into being a drug addict or an alcoholic, right? That's why you have people who go to prison and then they become homosexuals while they're in prison. All right. So this is why these type of things have to be covered. And, these type of stories have to be highlighted so people understand what's going on around them. But anyway. The study, a 144-page paper, was written by Dr. Lawrence S. Mayer. I got to look this guy up. By Dr. Lawrence S. Mayer, an epidemiologist and biostatistician also trained in psychiatry. And once again, the acceptance of homosexuality is based purely in the pseudoscience known as psychiatrics. All right? There is no real scientific data behind it. Going all the way back to Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, they were promoting the acceptance of pansexuality. All right, those are facts. Anyway, who is currently a scholar in residence at the Department of Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Dr. Paul R. McHugh, who also co-wrote the paper, is a renowned psychiatrist, researcher, and educator, and former chief of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins Hospital. So they're giving you these people's credentials. So you brothers can go out there and look them up on your own. I know I'm going to look them up when I get the opportunity. Dr. Mayer said many people who contributed to the study asked not to be identified. Of course, because that's a major issue. Now, I don't know if you guys remember Ellen DeGeneres, she became famous when she came out of the closet for being with an actress named Anne Heche. Now remember how much they were promoting Anne Heche when she came out of the closet as a so-called lesbian. Now when Anne Heche decided that she was going to go back to being a quote-unquote heterosexual, she disappeared. They castigated her in the media, right? In the so-called Caucasian or Western media or liberal media, they castigated her. Why would they do that? Unless they're telling you that it is a crime now to be a heterosexual, or that's what they're trying to tacitly promote. Once you come out the closet, you can't go back in, right? Because when she did that, that took a lot of credibility away from the I was born that way, because they wanted her to run with the story that she was a repressed lesbian her whole life, right? The fact that she had a lesbian dalliance with Ellen DeGeneres and now went back to heterosexuality, it made it look like what it is, which was a mental disorder. All right. But anyway, let's jump down to the to this portion here where it says some fear an angry response, the italicized portion, some fear an angry response from the more militant elements of the LGBT community. Others feared an angry response from the more strident elements of religiously conservative communities. Most bothersome, however, is that some feared reprisals from their own universities for engaging in such controversial topics. Now, see, what does that prove? That proves that these universities are on the take from the U.S. government and the LGBT, allegedly. They're on the take. Because if they wasn't on the take, why would you be worried about, why would you be worried about actual findings? That tells you that they have a narrative that they have to push. It's not about finding the truth. They have a narrative. All right. Now, colleges are based in the old Babylonian groves. I'm going to go into that later when I do the breakdown on Dear White People. All right. When you go to a so-called college, you're going through the instruction or the educational system of the Bacchus. And I'll go into that later. All right. But anyway, let's continue on. So most bothersome, however, is that some fear reprisals from their own universities for engaging such controversial topics, regardless of the report's content. A sad statement about academic freedom. I agree. The paper's 3 sections focus on sexual orientation, links between sexuality and mental health, and gender identity. Drawing on studies in fields varying from neurobiology to social sciences, the researchers wrote, the understanding of sexual orientation is an innate, biologically fixed property of human beings. The idea that people are born that way is not supported by scientific evidence. So I want you guys to please, this is a scientific paper. All right. Please understand this. Now, you'll have certain homosexuals or people who engage in alternative sexual orientation that will tell you, well, what about the animals? You have animals that engage in homosexuality. There are no animals that engage in homosexuality. You have animals that engage in animal behavior. All right. You cannot compare the behavior of human beings to the behavior of animals. Anybody who watches National Geographic understands that animals do a lot of things that people are not supposed to do. You cannot use them as a framework or a baseline for proper human conduct. All right. Go watch the lions. When a male lion takes over a pride, the first thing he does is engage in what's called infanticide. He kills all the cubs of that other man. So is it okay for a man to move in with a woman and kill her children because they're not his? It's nonsense. But anyway, the study stated that even the term sexual orientation itself is ambiguous. The term, according to the study, is used to describe attraction, behavior, or identity by different researchers. Sometimes the same term refers to things such as belonging to a certain community or having certain fantasies. The study said it is important then that researchers are clear about which of these domains are being studied, and that we keep in mind the researchers' specified definitions when we interpret their findings. The researchers acknowledged in the study that there are biological factors associated with sexual behavior, but pointed out that there are no compelling causal biological explanations for human sexual orientation. You know why? Because there is none. They cannot find a so-called gay gene. It doesn't exist. For example, some studies have showed that there are differences in the brain structures of gay and straight people. You know who they're referring to? When they say that, some studies, they're referring to a doctor named Dr. Simon LeVay, a homosexual himself who claimed that he found that the hypothalamus gland in homosexual men was the same size as it is in women. And he was found to have fabricated his data because he's a homosexual and he was upset that his lover had died, and he was trying to legitimize the scientific or the biological basis of homosexuality by looking for a gland that could show that, that people are born that way. So he fabricated data. His name is Dr. Simon LeVay. You could look him up. Anyway, and he later recanted his findings. He later admitted that his findings didn't prove anything. You know why? Because that was his tacit way of saying that he lied. But anyway, but the study said the differences are not necessarily innate and may be the result of environmental or psychological factors. Right? In other words, it's the environment that you're raised in, what you're subjected to. See, what they really want to say was that it was based in pedophilia. A lot of these homosexuals are victims of pedophilia or some form of depraved sexual conduct. Unfortunately, a lot of children are getting molested, right? Both heterosexually and homosexually. Once again, the god Pan. The strongest statement that science offers to explain sexual orientation is that some biological factors appear to an unknown extent to predispose some individuals to a non-heterosexual orientation. I agree with that. For some people who say, well, you don't believe at all that some people are born gay, I do believe that some people are born homosexual. In the same way that I believe that people are born with other mental issues and disorders where they need help. They just do. They need help. Explaining further, the researchers reveal LGBT individuals are statistically at greater risk of having mental health problems than the general population. The researchers said in the United States, for example, the rate of lifetime suicide attempts across all ages of transgender individuals is estimated at 41%, compared to under 5% in the overall population of the country. The usually accepted explanation for this is social stress from discrimination and stigma. But the study said that those factors may not solely explain the disparity, and that more scientific research on the issue is necessary. In other words, it's not because they're getting bullied that they're killing themselves more. It's because they are naturally mentally unstable and fractured by nature. They suffer from gender identity disorder. They don't know who or what they are. All right? That's what they're suffering from. The paper added that the notion that gender identity is fixed and determined by biological factors is also not backed up by data. More scientific data is also needed to back this claim, according to the researchers. In reviewing the scientific literature, we find that almost nothing is well understood when we seek biological explanations for what causes some individuals to state that their gender does not match their biological sex. I'm going to read that again. In reviewing the scientific literature, we find that almost nothing is well understood when we seek biological explanations for what causes some individuals to state that their gender does not match their biological sex. In concluding the study, the researchers warned against resorting to drastic medical treatment, such as sex reassignment surgery, for people identified or identifying as transgender. I'm going to read it again. Concluding the study, the researchers warned against resorting to drastic medical treatment, such as sex reassignment surgery, for people identified or identifying as transgender. I believe it was a brother who made a comment on my channel who said that a large amount of transgenders actually get the operation to go back to their original sex because they go to the opposite sex and they're still not happy. Why is that? Because they have a mental disorder. The researchers said their warning is especially true in children whose sexuality is mutable and for whom such treatments may do more harm than good. So you see that woman out there, that so-called woman, Charlize Theron, she should be arrested for what she's doing to that little black male child out there in California, cross-dressing him. She should be arrested, but she's engaging in a Bacchus ritual. That's why you see a lot of these celebrities are having their children cross-dress, and they're raising them as the opposite sex. So now, there is little scientific evidence for the therapeutic value of interventions that delay puberty or modify the secondary sex characteristics of adolescence, although some children may have improved psychological well-being if they are encouraged and supported in their cross-gender identification. There is no evidence that, that's the equivalent of your child begging you for ice cream and you just give them ice cream. What's going to happen? Your child's going to get diabetes. All right? There's an issue with parents that think that just because their child, you see your little boy at 2 years old playing with dolls, oh, he must be a girl. Let me put him in a dress. That means that the child probably has less mental issues than the adult has. The adult should be treated for help. There is no evidence that all children who express gender atypical thoughts or behavior should be encouraged to become transgender. You see, that's what I just said. The researchers said. The researchers finally noted that their study touches upon controversial issues, insisting that first and foremost, it is about science and the need for additional evidence in the field. They encourage Western societies to accept the study from a scientific point of view. Now, I'm going to read this again. They encourage Western societies, which is, AKA Caucasian societies, to accept the study from a scientific point of view. Now, aren't Western societies supposedly typically associated with science and saying that we accept things scientifically? This study is showing you that they know for a fact that the Western society is promoting the acceptance of homosexuality, transgenderism, etc., because they are totally rejecting the scientific findings. All right? And not by emotions and personal beliefs. So anyway, that's it on this article. You brothers or whoever else is here, you guys can go look a lot of this stuff up on your own. All right. So peace.